My name is Sarah Williams, and at 32 years old, I thought I'd finally outgrown feeling like the invisible child in my family. Standing on my parents' doorstep that day, birthday gift bag in hand, I had no idea my world was about to implode. Inside that bag was a lottery ticket I'd bought as a fun little present for them. Little did I know that while I was bringing them a gift on my birthday, they had just bought my sister Emma a $750,000 house. And me? I got nothing. Not even a happy birthday. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt overlooked in your family. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Montclair, New Jersey. Our house wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable enough. A two-story colonial with light blue shutters, a yard my dad meticulously maintained, and family photos that told a very specific story. If you looked at those photos on the mantel, you'd notice something right away. Emma was always front and center. Emma and I are 4 years apart. She's my younger sister, but you'd never know it from the way my parents treated her. While I was the serious one with straight A's, honor roll, and perfect attendance, Emma was the social butterfly who could charm anyone with her smile. My parents were completely under her spell from day one. "Sarah, why can't you be more outgoing like your sister?" my mother would ask when I preferred reading over parties. Emma just has that special something. That special something apparently excused Emma from most responsibilities. When I was 15, I got a part-time job at the local library to save for college. Emma never worked a day during high school. When I made National Honor Society, my parents nodded and said, "That's nice, honey." When Emma got a C- instead of failing math, they took her out for ice cream to celebrate. I'm not bitter. At least, I try not to be. I just wanted the same recognition, the same celebration of my achievements. After graduating with a teaching degree, I found work at Oak Ridge Elementary, teaching 3rd grade. The pay wasn't great, but I loved my students. Every day brought new challenges and rewards as I watched these 8-year-olds discover their potential. My tiny apartment near the school wasn't much, but I'd furnished it myself, paid my own rent, and took pride in my independence. Emma, meanwhile, dropped out of community college after 1 semester. "It just wasn't for me," she explained with a shrug that my parents accepted without question. She tried her hand at photography. My parents bought her a $3,000 camera. Then jewelry making, another $2,000 in supplies. Then interior design, classes paid for by guess who. Nothing stuck. Each venture lasted a few months before she got bored and moved on to the next thing. Yet my parents continued supporting her financially. They paid her rent at an upscale apartment downtown. They covered her car payments on a new SUV. They even gave her a monthly allowance, as if she were still 16 instead of 28 years old. "Emma just hasn't found her path yet," my mother would explain when I carefully broached the subject. "She's a free spirit." I would bite my tongue instead of pointing out that free spirits are a lot freer when someone else is footing the bill. Despite this uneven treatment, I still craved my parents' approval. I visited them regularly, called every Sunday, remembered every birthday and anniversary. I was the responsible daughter, the one who showed up, who played by the rules. Surely that counted for something. The spring before my 32nd birthday, things took a turn at school. Budget cuts were announced, and several teaching positions would be eliminated for the following year. As one of the newer teachers, my job wasn't secure. The principal assured me they would try to keep me, but nothing was guaranteed. The stress of potential unemployment kept me up at night. My savings wouldn't last more than a few months, and the job market for teachers in our area was competitive. I didn't want to move away from the community I'd grown to love, but I might not have a choice. During this period of anxiety, I maintained one small indulgence: buying a lottery ticket once a week. I knew the odds were astronomical, but there was something hopeful about that little piece of paper. For $1, I bought a daydream, a brief escape from reality where I imagined what I would do if I won. Most of my fantasies involved setting up a foundation for underprivileged students or creating a scholarship fund, money to make a difference. As my birthday approached, my mother called to invite me for dinner. "We'll do something special," she promised, which lightened my mood considerably. Maybe they remembered this year. Maybe they cared after all. The day before the dinner, I bought my usual lottery ticket, but on impulse, I picked up a second one. I thought it might be fun to give it to my parents as a little gift. We could dream together about what we'd do if we won. A small gesture, but I hoped it might create a moment of connection. I tucked the ticket into a birthday card I'd chosen for them. "Thanks for everything," I wrote inside, a sentiment more hopeful than accurate. Then I placed it in a small gift bag with some gourmet chocolates I knew my mother loved. Walking up to their door that evening, gift in hand, I felt a familiar mix of hope and apprehension. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time, I'd finally feel like I belonged. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6:30, the time my mother had specified. The familiar scent of garlic and rosemary greeted me when I opened the door, suggesting my mother was making her signature roast chicken. In the past, she'd prepared this dish for special occasions, which sent a little flutter of hope through my chest. Maybe they had remembered my birthday after all. "Hello?" I called out, setting my purse and the gift bag on the entryway table. "Mom? Dad?" "In the kitchen," my mother responded, her voice distracted. I found her stirring something on the stove, her attention divided between the pot and her phone, which she kept glancing at every few seconds. My father sat at the kitchen table, also engrossed in his phone, barely looking up when I entered. "Hi, honey," he said absently. "No happy birthday." No acknowledgement whatsoever. I stood awkwardly in the doorway, the familiar disappointment settling over me like a heavy blanket. "Need any help?" I offered. No, everything's under control," my mother replied, still not making eye contact. "Emma should be here any minute." Of course. They were waiting for Emma. The real celebration couldn't start until she arrived. "Can I at least set the table?" I asked, needing something to do with my hands and the nervous energy coursing through me. "Already done," my mother said, finally glancing up. "But you could open the wine. The corkscrew is in the drawer." I busied myself with the wine, noting that they'd selected a $20 bottle from the local grocery store. Nothing special, but I tried not to read too much into it. At least there would be alcohol to help me through whatever this evening held. Both my parents' phones chimed simultaneously with text notifications. They immediately checked them, matching smiles spreading across their faces. "She's here," my mother announced, as if the queen herself had arrived. Moments later, the front door burst open, and Emma's voice rang through the house. "I'm here. Sorry I'm late." She breezed into the kitchen like a whirlwind of expensive perfume and jangling bracelets. At 28, my sister looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her outfit clearly new and trendy. "Oh my God, I have the most amazing news," Emma exclaimed, not bothering with proper greetings. She didn't even acknowledge my presence as she hugged our parents. "Let's wait until we're sitting down," my mother suggested, exchanging meaningful glances with my father. "I can hardly contain myself," Emma replied, practically bouncing with excitement. We moved to the dining room, where the table was indeed already set with the good china and crystal glasses. My mother brought out the food, and my father poured the wine. Throughout these preparations, not one of them mentioned that it was my birthday. Not even a casual, "Oh, by the way," or "while we're celebrating." Nothing. I told myself it didn't matter. I was 32, not 12. Birthdays weren't that important anymore. But a small, childish part of me still felt the sting of being forgotten. Once we were all seated, Emma could no longer contain herself. "Okay, can I tell her now?" she asked my parents, who nodded eagerly. "Tell me what?" I wondered, taking a large sip of wine. Emma turned to me, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom and Dad bought me a house." I nearly choked on my drink. A house? I repeated, certain I'd misheard. Yes, a gorgeous 4-bedroom colonial in Westfield. Emma gushed. It just came on the market, and it's in the most exclusive neighborhood. The owners were moving abroad and needed to sell quickly, so Mom and Dad swooped in with a cash offer. My father nodded proudly. $750,000. A steal for that area, really. My mind reeled. $750,000. Cash. For Emma's house. Meanwhile, I was facing possible unemployment, living paycheck to paycheck, in a 1-bedroom apartment with rent that increased every year. Isn't that amazing? My mother prompted when I remained silent. Wow, I managed, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. That's really something. Want to see the pictures? Emma didn't wait for my response before sliding her phone across the table. Look at the master suite, and the kitchen has all Viking appliances. I'm thinking of redoing the bathrooms, though. They're a little dated. I nodded mechanically as she swiped through photos of a house that was at least 5 times the size of my apartment. A house that my parents had purchased outright from my perpetually unemployed sister, while I, who had worked steadily since I was 15, was worrying about making rent if I lost my job. And the backyard has a pool, Emma added. You'll have to come over for a swim once I'm settled in. Sounds great, I replied automatically, though inside I was crumbling. Not only had they forgotten my birthday, but they had chosen this day of all days to announce this astronomical gift to my sister. The conversation continued around me. They discussed renovation plans, furniture shopping trips, and a housewarming party. Not once did anyone mention my birthday. Not once did they ask about my life, my job insecurity, or anything related to me at all. I sat through the meal in a daze, my appetite gone, moving food around my plate and taking frequent sips of wine to keep from having to speak. The gift bag I'd brought sat forgotten by the front door. Excuse me, I finally said during a pause in their excited planning. I need to use the restroom. In the privacy of the small powder room, I gripped the edge of the sink and stared at my reflection. The face that looked back at me was pale, with eyes that betrayed decades of hurt and disappointment. This wasn't just about a forgotten birthday or an expensive gift for my sister. This was about a lifetime of feeling invisible in my own family. A sudden thought occurred to me. The lottery. Ticket in the gift bag. I'd bought it as a gesture of goodwill, a small token to share with my parents. But in this moment, it felt like one more thing I would give them while receiving nothing in return. Making a split-second decision, I left the bathroom and quietly retrieved the lottery ticket from the gift bag, slipping it into my pocket. I'd keep the chocolates in the bag. They'd never know there was supposed to be something else. Back at the table, the conversation continued without anyone noting my extended absence. Emma was now talking about paint colors, my mother offering enthusiastic suggestions, my father nodding along. I should go, I said suddenly, interrupting Emma mid-sentence. 3 surprised faces turned toward me. But we haven't had dessert, my mother protested. I made tiramisu. Not, please stay, it's your birthday. Not, we haven't celebrated you yet, just concern about her uneaten dessert. I'm not feeling well, I lied, already standing. I have an early day tomorrow anyway. Oh, that's too bad, my father said, his attention already drifting back to Emma's phone and the house photos. Don't forget your gift, I said, gesturing toward the entryway as I gathered my purse. My mother looked confused. What gift? Just some chocolates, I replied, my voice steady despite the pain lancing through me. For you and Dad. How sweet, she said, though her tone suggested it was an afterthought. Feel better, honey. I left without anyone walking me to the door. As I backed out of the driveway, I could see them through the dining room window, still, gathered around the table, laughing and talking animatedly. They probably hadn't even noticed I was gone. The lottery ticket burned in my pocket as I drove away, tears blurring my vision. It was just a stupid piece of paper with virtually no chance of winning, but right now it felt like the only thing that was truly mine. The drive home passed in a blur of tears and traffic lights. I barely registered the familiar streets and turns, operating on autopilot while my mind replayed the evening's events on endless loop. The casual disregard, the extravagant gift for Emma, the complete absence of any acknowledgement of my birthday. By the time I reached my apartment building, my mascara had created dark rivers down my cheeks. I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror and hardly recognized the broken woman staring back at me. Inside my tiny one-bedroom apartment, the silence was deafening. No birthday cards on the counter, no wrapped presents, no cake. Just the echoing emptiness that matched the hollow feeling in my chest. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the couch, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. This bone-deep weariness came from years of seeking approval and validation from people who seemed constitutionally incapable of giving it to me. As I lay there in the dark, memories flooded back unbidden. Emma's 8th birthday, when my parents had rented a pony for the backyard. My 8th birthday, when I'd received a book and been told to be grateful. Emma's high school graduation party with 50 guests and catered food. My college graduation, which my parents had attended but left early because Emma had a dance recital. The pattern was so clear, so consistent, that I wondered how I'd managed to hope for anything different tonight. What had I expected? That suddenly, after 32 years, they would see me? My phone buzzed with a text message. For one pathetic moment, I thought perhaps one of my parents had realized their oversight and was reaching out to wish me a happy birthday. But it was Taylor, my best friend since college. How was the birthday dinner? Did they remember this year? Stared at her message, unsure how to even begin explaining what had happened. Finally, I typed, "They bought Emma a house. $750,000 cash. Didn't even mention my birthday." 3 dots appeared immediately, followed by, "What? I'm calling you right now." Seconds later, my phone rang. "Please tell me you're joking," Taylor said when I answered. "I wish I was," I replied, my voice cracking. "They didn't even say happy birthday, Taylor. Not once." "That's beyond messed up," she said, anger evident in her tone. "A house? For Emma? Miss, I can't keep a job for more than 3 months?" "Complete with pool and Viking appliances," I confirmed, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks. "Sarah, you need to say something to them. This has gone on too long. They can't just keep treating you like this." What would I even say? Why don't you love me as much as her? I'd sound pathetic. "It's not pathetic to want to be treated fairly by your own parents," Taylor insisted. "This isn't about being jealous of your sister. It's about them consistently devaluing you while putting her on a pedestal." Deep down, I knew she was right. But confrontation had never been my strong suit, especially with my parents. I'd spent so many years trying to be the perfect daughter, the one who never caused problems or made waves. Breaking that pattern seemed impossible. "I'll think about it," I promised, though we both knew I probably wouldn't. After hanging up with Taylor, I dragged myself through my nightly routine and collapsed into bed, emotionally drained. But sleep proved elusive. I tossed and turned, replaying the evening and mentally rewriting the script. In my revised version, my parents remembered my birthday. They were proud of me. They saw me. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a headache that matched my heart's dull ache. I called in sick to school, something I never did. But the thought of putting on a brave face for 25 third graders felt beyond my capabilities. Instead, I spent the day on the couch, alternating between crying jags and numbness. My phone showed notifications from birthday wishes from friends and colleagues, but nothing from my family. Not even Emma, who had my birthday programmed into her phone like everyone else's. That evening, my mother texted, "Hope you're feeling better. Emma is meeting with contractors tomorrow about the bathroom renovations." No mention of my birthday, not even belatedly. Just more news about Emma's house. I didn't respond. Days passed, and I moved through them like a ghost. I returned to school, going through the motions of teaching without my usual enthusiasm. My students noticed, with 8-year-old directness. "Ms. Williams, are you sad?" little Zoe asked one afternoon as I listlessly supervised art projects. "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. At lunch, the principal stopped by the teacher's lounge to deliver more news about budget cuts. 2 positions would definitely be eliminated, and seniority would be the determining factor. As one of the newer teachers, my chances of keeping my job were slim. Under normal circumstances, I might have called my parents for support or advice. Now, the thought didn't even cross my mind. The following weekend, Taylor dragged me out for coffee, concerned about my withdrawal. "You can't keep this bottled up," she said across the small cafe table. "You need to confront them." "What's the point?" I asked, stirring my untouched latte. "They won't change. This isn't just about changing them. It's about standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, showing yourself that you deserve better treatment." "Maybe," I conceded noncommittally. "Sarah, look at me," Taylor insisted. "I'm worried about you. You're not sleeping. You're barely eating. You're withdrawing from everything you care about. This isn't healthy." She was right, of course. I wasn't myself. Teaching, which had always been my passion, now felt like an insurmountable chore. I avoided phone calls and declined social invitations. Food had lost its taste, and sleep offered no rest, just vivid dreams of disappointment and rejection. My parents called twice over the next 2 weeks. I let both go to voicemail. The first was my mother, rambling about Emma's house renovations. The second was my father, asking if I could help Emma move some furniture on the weekend. Not one word about my silence or my missed birthday. It was as if they didn't even notice anything was wrong. Emma texted several times, all messages centered around her needs. "Can you help me pick paint colors?" And, "Do you still have that contact for the handyman you used last year?" No acknowledgement of the birthday dinner debacle or concern about my unusual silence. 3 weeks after the birthday dinner, I was cleaning out my purse when I discovered the forgotten lottery ticket tucked into a side pocket. I'd completely forgotten about it in the emotional aftermath of that night. I stared at the small piece of paper, remembering how I'd bought it as a gesture of goodwill toward parents who couldn't even remember to wish me happy birthday. The irony felt bitter and familiar. I tossed the ticket onto my kitchen counter, planning to check the numbers later if I remembered. It seemed like such a trivial thing now, barely worth the effort of looking up the results. That evening, while waiting for a frozen dinner to heat in the microwave, I absent-mindedly picked up the lottery ticket again. My laptop was open on the counter, so on a whim, I navigated to the lottery website to check the winning numbers from the drawing 2 weeks prior. I didn't expect anything. I never expected anything. That's not how my life worked. The lottery website loaded slowly, the spinning circle mocking my impatience. I almost closed the browser, dismissing the whole exercise as pointless. What were the odds anyway? 1 in hundreds of millions. A statistical impossibility. Finally, the page appeared with the winning numbers prominently displayed. I glanced between the screen and my ticket, expecting the usual disappointment. But then I froze. The first number matched. And the second? And the third? My hand began to shake as I continued checking. 4th number, 5th number, the 6th and final number. All matching. I stared in disbelief, certain I must be misreading something. People like me didn't win the lottery. People like me didn't get lucky breaks. People like me worked hard and got overlooked anyway. I refreshed the page, thinking there must be some mistake. The same numbers appeared. I checked the date of the drawing against my ticket. They aligned perfectly. With trembling fingers, I input the numbers into the website's verification tool. A message flashed on screen. Congratulations. This appears to be a winning ticket for the jackpot drawn on date. Please contact your state lottery office for claim procedures. The microwave beeped insistently, but I couldn't move. My frozen dinner would stay frozen as reality itself seemed to bend around me. According to the website, the jackpot had been $14.5 million. Even after taxes, that was life-changing money. Money that would have gone to my parents if I hadn't reclaimed that ticket from the gift bag. My breathing accelerated until I was practically hyperventilating. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. Numbly, I made my way to the couch before my legs gave out, clutching the ticket like a lifeline. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like me. Yet there it was, a small paper rectangle worth millions, held between my shaking fingers. I must have sat there for 20 minutes, frozen in shock, before my survival instincts kicked in. I needed to tell someone. I needed confirmation that I wasn't hallucinating. Taylor. I needed to call Taylor. My fingers fumbled with the phone. It was nearly 10 o'clock at night, but this couldn't wait. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy. Sarah? Everything okay? I need you to come over, I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. Right now. Please. What's wrong? Concern instantly replaced sleepiness. Are you hurt? No, I'm fine. I need you to see something. I can't tell you over the phone. Please, Taylor. I'll be there in 15 minutes, she promised, already sounding fully awake. Don't move. While waiting, I paced my small living room, the ticket clutched in my hand. Should I hide it somewhere? What if someone broke in? What if I accidentally dropped it? What if it wasn't real after all, and I was having some kind of breakdown? The knock at my door nearly made me jump out of my skin. Taylor stood there in sweatpants and a hoodie. Hair hastily pulled into a ponytail, concern etched on her face. What's going on? You're scaring me. Wordlessly, I pulled her inside and locked the door behind her. Then I thrust the ticket toward her. I need you to check these numbers against the lottery website, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Tell me I'm not crazy. Taylor looked confused, but took the ticket. Okay. I directed her to my laptop on the kitchen counter, still open to the lottery page. She looked back and forth between the screen and the ticket, her expression shifting, from confusion to disbelief. Sarah, she said slowly, turning to face me. This is the winning ticket. All 6 numbers match. Hearing someone else confirm it made it suddenly, terrifyingly real. $14.5 million, I whispered. Holy shit, Taylor breathed, her eyes wide. Holy shit, Sarah! She launched herself at me, wrapping me in a crushing hug that finally broke through my shocked stupor. I burst into tears, emotions too complex to name pouring out of me. This was the ticket, I sobbed into her shoulder. The one I was going to give my parents on my birthday. The one I took back when they didn't even acknowledge me. Taylor pulled back to look at me, realization dawning on her face. Oh my God, if you'd given it to them. They would have had it all, I finished. And I would still have nothing. We stared at each other, the cosmic significance of that moment at my parents' house washing over us both. If I hadn't taken that ticket back, my life wouldn't have changed at all. I'd still be the overlooked daughter, still struggling financially, still invisible. What are you going to do? Taylor asked, awe in her voice. I don't know, I admitted, the reality of my situation only beginning to sink in. What do people even do when they win the lottery? The next few hours were a blur of research and planning. Taylor, ever practical, helped me look up the proper procedures for claiming such a large prize. We learned I would need to contact the State Lottery Commission, that I should sign the back of the ticket immediately, and that I should probably consult with financial advisors and attorneys before making any announcements. You need to keep this quiet for now, Taylor advised. Don't tell anyone else until you've got legal protection in place. I nodded, then paused as a thought occurred to me. What about my parents? What about Emma? Taylor's expression hardened slightly. What about them? They don't need to know anything yet. But once I claim it, it becomes public record. My name will be in the news. Cross that bridge when you come to it, she said firmly. Right now, focus on protecting yourself and your interests. They certainly haven't been looking out for you. She was right. But the thought of my family finding out through the news rather than from me directly felt wrong somehow, despite everything. The following morning, I called in sick to school again and contacted the State Lottery Commission. The woman, who answered, was kind but businesslike, explaining the process for claiming a jackpot prize. I would need to come to their headquarters in person, bring multiple forms of identification, and be prepared for a verification process. Congratulations, she said warmly before hanging up. Your life is about to change. It already had. I spent the day in a daze, unable to fully process what was happening. Taylor took the day off work to stay with me, helping me organize the documents I would need, and researching reputable financial advisors who specialized in sudden wealth. You should quit your job, she suggested as we sat at my kitchen table, making lists. You don't need it anymore, and with the layoffs coming anyway? I can't just quit, I protested automatically. My students need me. Taylor gave me a pointed look. Sarah, you're worth millions now. You could fund an entire teaching position for someone else if you wanted to. But first, you need to take care of yourself. The idea that I could actually make that kind of difference with my newfound wealth was staggering. I could fund teaching positions. I could create scholarships. I could do all the things I'd daydreamed about on those evenings when I'd purchased my weekly ticket. The following day, Taylor drove me to the lottery headquarters, the precious ticket secured in an envelope inside my purse. I clutched the purse on my lap the entire drive, irrationally terrified that the ticket might somehow vanish if I let go. The lottery office was surprisingly mundane, with fluorescent lighting and generic office furniture. I had expected something more festive for a place that changed lives so dramatically. A team of officials greeted me, checking my identification and the ticket with meticulous care. There were forms to sign, questions to answer, and procedures to follow. The process took hours, but eventually they confirmed what I still couldn't quite believe. I was the sole winner of $14.5 million. After taxes, I would receive approximately $8.7 million as a lump sum payment, an unfathomable amount for someone who had been worried about making rent just weeks earlier. We'll need to issue a press release, one official explained. State law requires that lottery winners be publicly identified. We can schedule a press conference if you like, or we can simply release your name and the amount. Just the name and amount, I said quickly, the thought of cameras and microphones making me nauseous. No press conference. Very well, the announcement. We'll go out tomorrow. You should be prepared for some media attention regardless. People are always interested in lottery winners. I nodded, already dreading the invasion of privacy that would follow. But it couldn't be helped. State law was state law. As I left the building, check in hand, a ceremonial one for photographs with the real funds to be transferred electronically, I felt oddly empty. I had expected elation, relief, or at least excitement. Instead, I felt a strange detachment, as if this were happening to someone else entirely. You okay? Taylor asked as we walked to her car. I don't know, I admitted. It doesn't feel real. It will, she assured me, squeezing my arm. Once you start making plans, once you see that money in your account, it'll feel real. She was right, of course, but what she couldn't have anticipated was how quickly reality would come crashing in, not in the form of newfound wealth, but in the shape of family members who had suddenly remembered I existed. The press release went out the following morning, just as the lottery officials had promised. By noon, my phone was blowing up with messages from old classmates, distant relatives, and even former colleagues I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone suddenly wanted to reconnect with the newly wealthy Sarah Williams. I silenced my phone and focused on the meeting with the financial advisor Taylor had vetted. He was professional and reassuring, outlining strategies for investment, tax planning, and wealth preservation. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that this was really happening, that my life had genuinely changed overnight. Study. Most important thing, he advised, is to take your time making any major decisions. Don't rush into large purchases or investments. Don't make promises to anyone about money. Give yourself time to adjust to your new circumstances. I nodded, appreciating his caution. What about family? He gave me a knowing look. Family can be complicated even without money involved. My advice is to establish clear boundaries early. Once you start giving, it can be difficult to stop. His words resonated more than he could know. When I returned home, I checked my messages, scrolling past the obvious money grabs from people I barely remembered. Among them was a text from my mother. Are you free for Thanksgiving? Let me know. Soon, so I can plan the menu. Emma's bringing her new boyfriend. Not, we haven't heard from you in weeks, is everything okay? Not, we missed you. Just a casual inquiry about a holiday that was still months away, as if nothing were amiss. I didn't respond, still uncertain how to approach the inevitable conversation about my windfall. Part of me wanted to ignore them completely, to disappear from their lives as thoroughly as they had disappeared from mine emotionally. But another part knew I needed closure, needed to face them with my new reality. Before I could decide, another text came through, this one from Emma. Hey sis, any chance you could help me with some renovation costs? The bathroom remodel is running about $10K over budget, and Mom and Dad already put so much into the house. I'd pay you back eventually. Love you. No greeting, no acknowledgement of my silence, just a request for money. $10,000, casually, asked for as if she were borrowing $20. I stared at the message, anger building inside me like a physical force. She didn't even know I'd won the lottery yet. This was just her normal entitlement, expecting that even though I made a fraction of what our parents gave her, I should somehow help fund her luxury bathroom. I threw my phone across the room. Satisfaction, flaring briefly as it hit the wall. It didn't break, unfortunately, just clattered to the floor with Emma's message still glowing on the screen. 3 days later, I still hadn't responded to either my mother or Emma when my father called. His voicemail was brief. Sarah, we need to talk. Call me back. The terseness was unusual for him, and for a moment, I wondered if they'd seen the lottery announcement. But no, if that were the case, the message would have been very different. More congratulatory, more interested. After another day of silence on my part, my mother called again. Sarah, your behavior is concerning us. Whatever is bothering you, we should discuss it as a family. Emma is worried too. I almost laughed out loud at that. Emma? Worried about someone other than herself? That would be a first. Finally, after a week of ignored calls and texts, I made a decision. I would meet with them face to face. I would tell them about the lottery win before they heard it elsewhere. And I would finally confront them about the lifetime of favoritism and neglect that had led to this moment. I texted my mother, I'll come over Saturday at 2 p.m. I have something important to discuss. Her reply was immediate. Wonderful. Emma, we'll be here too. She's picking out light fixtures and wants your opinion. Of course she does, I thought bitterly. Even my request for a serious conversation had somehow become about Emma's house. Saturday arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. As I drove to my parents' house, I wasn't nervous or anxious. I felt oddly calm, empowered in a way that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with finally standing up for myself. When I arrived, my family was gathered in the living room, Photo layouts of bathroom fixtures spread across the coffee table. My entrance barely disrupted their animated discussion. "Sarah, finally!" Emma exclaimed, not bothering to get up. "Come look at these pendant lights for the master bath. I can't decide between the frosted glass or the clear." My mother patted the seat beside her. "We were getting worried about you, honey. Where have you been?" There it was. No acknowledgement of missed birthday. No recognition of the pain they'd caused. Just casual concern now that they needed something from me. I remained standing. "I have something to tell you." "Can it wait 5 minutes?" my father asked, not looking up from the catalog in his hands. "Emma needs to finalize these orders today to keep the renovation on schedule." "No," I said firmly. "It can't wait." Something in my tone finally caught their attention. 3 sets of eyes looked up at me with varying degrees of surprise. "What's going on?" my mother asked, a slight frown creasing her forehead. I took a deep breath. "2 things. First, none of you remembered my birthday last month." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, we did forget, didn't we? I'm so sorry, honey. With all the excitement about Emma's house." "That's the second thing," I continued, my voice steady. "On the day you announced buying Emma a $750,000 house on my birthday without even acknowledging it, I had brought you a gift." My father shifted uncomfortably. "You didn't need to do that." "It was a lottery ticket," I said, watching their faces carefully. "Just a small thing, a gesture. But when I realized you had completely forgotten me while giving Emma a house, I took the ticket back." A beat of silence. "Okay," Emma said slowly, clearly not seeing the significance. "That ticket won the jackpot," I stated flatly. $14.5 million. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's face drained of color. My father's mouth opened and closed without sound. Emma froze, the pendant light catalog slipping from her fingers to the floor. "You won the lottery?" my mother finally managed, her voice faint. "Yes," I confirmed. "The ticket I was going to give you as a gift. The one I took back when you couldn't even be bothered to say happy birthday to me." My father found his voice next. "You were going to give that ticket to us?" The naked regret in his tone sparked. Something in me, a righteous anger that had been building for decades. "That's what you focus on?" I asked incredulously. "Not the fact that you've consistently overlooked me my entire life? Not the fact that you bought Emma a house while I struggle to make rent? But the fact that you missed out on millions? That's not what I meant," he backpedaled quickly. "Isn't it, though?" I pressed. "Isn't that exactly what this family has always been about? What you can get from me versus what you give to Emma?" Emma stood up, her expression shifting from shock to calculation. "Sarah, we're all so happy for you. This is amazing news." "Are you?" I challenged. "Or are you just recalibrating how much you can ask me for now?" She had the grace to flush, confirming my suspicion. The renovation budget overruns she'd texted me about were surely just the beginning of what she'd planned to request. "That's not fair," my mother interjected. "We've always treated you both equally." I couldn't help it. I laughed, a genuine, if bitter laugh that seemed to startle them all. "Equally? You bought her a $750,000 house. What comparable gift have you ever given me?" "That's different," my father argued. "Emma needed help. You've always been so independent, so capable. So I'm punished for being responsible? For not dropping out of college? For holding down a job?" "We're not punishing you," my mother insisted, tears forming in her eyes. "We're proud of you." "You have a funny way of showing it," I replied coolly. "In fact, you don't show it at all." "What do you want from us, Sarah?" my father asked, a defensive edge to his voice. "An apology? Fine. We're sorry we missed your birthday. We're sorry if you felt overlooked." "If I felt overlooked?" I repeated. "There's no if about it. I was overlooked, consistently, deliberately, For my entire life. Emma stepped toward me, arms outstretched for a hug I had no interest in receiving. Come on, sis, let's not fight. This is wonderful news. We should be celebrating. I stepped back. Don't. Don't pretend this changes anything between us. The only thing that's changed is that now I can see everything clearly for the first time. What does that mean? My mother asked, alarm evident in her voice. It means I'm done, I said simply. Done trying to earn your approval. Done being the responsible one who gets nothing in return. Done watching Emma get everything handed to her while I get overlooked. You're just upset, my father said dismissively. This is a lot to process. Why don't we all calm down and discuss this rationally? I am being rational, I assured him. In fact, I've never seen things more clearly. This isn't about the money. The money just made the pattern impossible to ignore anymore. What pattern? Emma demanded, dropping all pretense of sisterly affection. The pattern where you get houses bought for you, and I get my birthday forgotten. The pattern where you ask me for renovation money, when you know I've been worried about losing my job. The pattern where you are the sun, and I'm not even a planet, in your solar system. The room fell silent again. My words hung in the air, undeniable and uncomfortable. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice small. What happens now? Now, I said, moving toward the door. I go live my life. A life where I'm valued. A life where I'm seen. And us? My father asked. I paused at the doorway, looking back at the three of them. They seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had my entire life. That's up to you, I answered honestly. But don't call me about Emma's renovation budget. Don't text me about Thanksgiving plans as if nothing has happened. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it will be on completely new terms. With that, I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. For perhaps the first time in my life, I felt completely certain about my place in the world and what I deserved from the people in it. The weekend after confronting my family, the media coverage began in earnest. My name and face appeared in the local newspaper, then on regional news websites, and finally on a few national platforms that loved human interest stories about lottery winners. The narrative was simple and appealing. Local elementary school teacher hits the jackpot. Fortunately, I had prepared. Following the advice of my new financial team, I had temporarily moved to a hotel under an assumed name and set up mail forwarding services. My personal phone number had been changed, with the old one maintained by an answering service that screened calls. These precautions proved necessary as distant acquaintances, former classmates, and complete strangers tried to contact me with heartfelt stories about their financial needs. What I hadn't fully prepared for was my family's response. 3 days. After our confrontation, Emma showed up at my school, causing a scene in the front office when she discovered I had taken a leave of absence. "She's my sister," I was told she shouted at the administrative assistant. "This is an emergency." Later that day, she sent a lengthy email to my new address, which I had reluctantly shared with my parents for emergency purposes only. "I know, we've had our differences," she wrote, "but I'm really struggling with the bathroom renovations. The contractor found mold behind the walls, and it's going to cost another $20,000 to remediate. Mom and Dad have already done so. Much for me, I can't ask them for more. You're the only one I can turn to. This is my dream home, Sarah. Please don't let it become a nightmare. Not a word about my feelings. Not a hint of recognition about the patterns I had pointed out. Just another request for money, dressed up in emotional manipulation." I didn't respond. My parents were more strategic. My mother sent a carefully worded apology. "We never meant to make you feel less loved. You were always so capable, so independent. We didn't think you needed us the way Emma did. We're proud of the woman you've become, lottery or no lottery. Please give us a chance to make things right." It was the closest thing to acknowledgement I had ever received from her, but it still missed the point entirely. They were sorry for how I felt, not for what they had done. My father took a different approach, sending a brief message that cut to his primary concern. We should discuss family financial planning. With your new situation, there are tax advantages to certain types of gifts and trusts. I've spoken with our accountant. No apology, no recognition. Just an attempt to manage my money before I had even settled into the reality of having it. I responded to neither. Instead, I focused on building my new life. With the guidance of my financial team, I purchased a home, not an extravagant mansion, but a comfortable 4-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with excellent schools. The irony that I could afford it outright, no mortgage necessary, was not lost on me. I set up a foundation focused on educational equality, with an emphasis on supporting underprivileged students. The paperwork was complex, the decisions numerous, but the sense of purpose it gave me was worth every meeting and signature. For my students at Oak Ridge Elementary, I created a special scholarship fund that would follow them through their educational journey. Each child in my class would have college tuition covered if they maintained reasonable academic standards. It wasn't about rewarding only the highest achievers, but about removing financial barriers for all. When I returned to school, after a 2-week absence, the principal called me into her office. "Sarah," she said gently, "you don't need to come back. Everyone would understand if you wanted to retire early." "I'm not ready to leave teaching," I told her honestly. "I love these kids. The money doesn't change that." "The district is concerned about disruption," she explained. "The media attention, the possibility of parents or strangers trying to approach you through the school." She had a point. My presence could potentially create security issues for the entire school. "What if I fund a teaching position instead?" I suggested. "I could work with the district in a different capacity, developing programs for students who need extra support." The idea took root and blossomed over subsequent meetings with district officials. Within a month, I had transitioned from classroom teacher to educational consultant, developing and funding programs that would reach far more children than I could have taught directly. Through it all, Taylor remained my steadfast support, helping me navigate both practical decisions and emotional landmines. "Your mother called me," she admitted over dinner one evening. "She wanted to know if you were being reasonable about family financial support." I nearly choked on my wine. "What did you tell her?" I told her that reasonable people don't forget their daughter's birthday while buying their other daughter a house, Taylor replied with a grim satisfaction. Then I hung up. I loved her for that loyalty, for understanding without explanation what so many others might question. Why wouldn't I share my good fortune with my family? Why would I hold a grudge over something as trivial as a forgotten birthday? But it had never been about just one birthday or just one house. It had been about a lifetime of imbalance, of invisible wounds that had shaped my very identity. 6 weeks after the lottery announcement, as I was settling into my new home, the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw my parents standing on the porch, looking uncomfortable but determined. I considered pretending I wasn't home. I considered calling security. In the end, though, I opened the door. "How did you find this address?" I asked by way of greeting. "Emma drove by your old apartment and talked to a neighbor," my mother admitted. "We've been worried about you." I didn't invite them in. "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." "We'd like to talk," my father said. "Properly this time." "About what?" "About everything you said," my mother replied, her voice soft. "About how we made you feel invisible." I studied their faces, looking for the manipulation, the angle. But all I saw was 2 aging parents who seemed, perhaps for the first time, genuinely uncertain. "I have an appointment soon," I lied. "But we can talk briefly." I led them to the back patio, offering water but nothing more hospitable. They sat stiffly on the outdoor furniture, taking in the modestly elegant garden and pool area. "Lovely home," my mother commented. "Thank you. I bought it outright. No mortgage." My father flinched slightly at the pointed remark. Sarah, my mother began, we've done a lot of thinking since you came to see us. A lot of soul-searching. And, I prompted when she paused. And you were right, she admitted, her eyes bright with unshed tears. We did favor Emma. We did overlook you. Not because we loved you less, but because she needed us more, my father finished. At least that's what we told ourselves. Emma was always struggling, always in some crisis that required our intervention. You were always so competent. So you punished me for not being a mess, I summarized. We didn't see it as punishment, my mother protested. We saw it as prioritizing. And now? I asked. Now that I don't need your financial support? Now that I could actually help you if I wanted to? How are you prioritizing? The question hung between us, uncomfortable in its directness. We want a relationship with you, my father said finally. Not because of the money, because you're our daughter and we've failed you. And Emma? I couldn't help asking. What does she want? My parents exchanged glances. Emma is struggling with all of this, my mother said diplomatically. She's always been the center of attention. This adjustment is difficult for her. I'm sure it is, I replied, no sympathy in my voice. Just like it was difficult for me to watch her get everything while I got nothing. The difference is, I never asked for special treatment. I just wanted equal consideration. They had no response to that, just uncomfortable silence. I need to get ready for my appointment, I said, standing. I appreciate you coming by, but I'm not ready for a family reunion yet. I need time and space. Of course, my mother said quickly, also rising. We understand. But please, Sarah, don't shut us out completely. We'd like a chance to do better. As I showed them out, my father turned at the door. For what it's worth, I am genuinely sorry about your birthday. It was inexcusable. It was a small thing, that specific acknowledgement. But it was something. After they left, I sat alone in my new living room, surrounded by possessions I had chosen, paid for with money that had almost been theirs. The irony was almost too perfect. If they had remembered my birthday, if they had shown me even basic consideration that night, the lottery ticket would have been theirs. Instead, their oversight had led directly to my financial independence, to a life where I would never need to seek their approval or support again. As if on cue, my phone chimed with a text from Emma. Mom and Dad said they saw you. I'm still waiting to hear about the bathroom renovation help. The mold is getting worse. Call me. Some things it seemed would never change, but I had, and that made all the difference. A full year passed after the lottery win, a year of profound transformation both externally and internally. My foundation was thriving, already making measurable differences in educational outcomes for hundreds of children. My consulting work with the school district had expanded to neighboring counties, with several of my programs being adopted as models for addressing educational inequality. On a personal level, the changes were even more significant. Weekly therapy sessions had helped me unravel the complex web of family dynamics that had shaped me. I no longer defined myself by what I lacked from my parents, but by what I could create and contribute to the world around me. My relationship with my family had evolved into something I could never have imagined before. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't the close-knit fantasy I had yearned for as a child. Instead, it was carefully bounded, defined by clear expectations and limits. My parents and I met once a month for lunch in a public restaurant. These meetings were cordial, sometimes even pleasant, but never intimate. They had learned not to ask about my finances or to mention Emma's latest crisis. I had learned not to expect the deep validation I had once craved. It was a relationship based on what was, not what might have been. Emma and I had minimal contact. Her initial anger at my refusal to fund her renovation had erupted into a series of nasty texts and social media posts about selfish family members and money-changing people. When those tactics failed to produce the desired results, she had shifted to elaborate apologies and promises to change, followed by immediate requests for financial help. I had blocked her number after the fifth such cycle, only unblocking it for family emergencies. The last I had heard, she had convinced our parents to pay for the mold remediation, plus an upgraded hot tub for the master bathroom as compensation for her stress. Some patterns were too deeply ingrained to break. On the anniversary of my lottery win, Taylor organized a small celebration at my home. Just a few close friends, good food, and a cake that read, "Congratulations on surviving year one as a millionaire." As we sat on the patio after dinner, watching the sunset reflect off the pool, Taylor raised her glass in a toast. To Sarah, who learned that sometimes the greatest gift is the one you give yourself. To boundaries and self-respect, added Miguel, another friend who had stood by me through the tumultuous year. To second chances, I said, thinking not of the money, but of the opportunity to rebuild my life on my own terms. Later, after the others had left, Taylor and I cleaned up together, falling into the comfortable rhythm of our long friendship. "Any regrets?" she asked, loading the dishwasher. "About the lottery? The family showdown? Any of it?" I considered the question seriously. "No," I said finally. "I regret that it took something so extreme for me to stand up for myself. I regret the years I spent seeking approval from people who couldn't or wouldn't give it. But I don't regret anything that's happened since." "Your parents seem to be trying," Taylor observed. "In their way," I agreed. "They're making an effort. It's just too little, too late for the kind of relationship they suddenly want now." "And Emma?" I shrugged. "Emma is Emma. She'll never change as long as enabling her works for her." The following morning, I awoke to a text from my mother. "Your father and I would like to have a special dinner for your birthday next month. Just the three of us. Please say yes." I stared at the message, emotions swirling. They had remembered without prompting this year. It was a small thing, perhaps, but significant. After careful consideration, I texted back, "Thank you, that would be nice." It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It wasn't forgetting. It was simply acknowledging that people can change, even if only incrementally, and that I could choose to recognize that change without erasing the past. That afternoon, I visited Oak Ridge Elementary for the annual awards ceremony my foundation sponsored. Watching the children receive recognition for their achievements, their faces bright with pride, I felt a sense of purpose that no amount of money could have provided. Zoe, my former student now in 4th grade, spotted me in the audience and waved enthusiastically. After the ceremony, she rushed over. "Ms. Williams, guess what? I got accepted to the summer science camp you told me about." "That's wonderful," I exclaimed, genuinely delighted. "I knew you could do it." "My mom says I'm going to be a scientist someday," she confided. "I believe that completely," I assured her. As I drove home, I reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, I had been defined by what I lacked, by the approval and love I couldn't seem to earn from my family. Now, I defined myself by what I could give, by the lives I could touch, by the boundaries I had the strength to maintain. The lottery hadn't changed who I was fundamentally. It had simply removed the financial pressures that had kept me trapped in unhealthy patterns. It had given me the space and resources to discover my own worth, independent of others' validation. Back home, I sat on my patio as twilight descended, nursing a glass of wine and watching the gentle movement of water in the pool. My phone, silenced, for the evening, lay ignored on the table beside me. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and rewards. There would be foundation meetings and investment decisions. There would be complex family dynamics to navigate and boundaries to maintain. There would be new opportunities to make a difference in the lives of children who, like me, needed someone to see and value them. But tonight, in this moment of quiet reflection, I was at peace with the journey that had brought me here. The girl, who had spent a lifetime seeking approval, had become a woman who understood her own value. The path had been unexpected, even painful at times, but I wouldn't trade it for any other. The greatest lottery win, I had discovered, wasn't the money at all. It was the freedom to finally become who I was always meant to be, without apology or explanation. True wealth, it turned out, was never about what you had, but about knowing what you were worth. Have you ever experienced a moment where you realized your worth wasn't dependent on someone else's approval? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of personal transformation. Life is too short to let others determine your value. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away.